there's this theme through all of these people, three people here, about connectivity and the way it's changing our lives and what it means just to be so quickly and immediately connected to literally billions of other people around the world, and also all of the data that we're all generating all the time, and the way that that can change our lives. As we go through this conversation, I'm kind of thinking of three big threads that I want that pull all of this together. One is just the possibilities that that opens up for us. The second is the risks. And third is thinking through the far-reaching consequences of what this is going to mean for us years and years down the road. I'm going to start with Jerry, who as an investor has kind of this bird's eye view about where we are right now in the internet's development. In this idea of the internet as a gift from God, that is a quote from the Pope. And he was talking about the possibilities brought to us by the internet for connectivity, but he also warned us about the risk of losing our bearings in this sea of high-speed information. So I want Jerry just to kind of chime in on what did the Pope mean when he said that? What does it mean for us to have this really powerful tool that is also bringing us some risks? And what do you see as an investor in the kind of landscape?
Do you mean, is the internet really a gift from God?
Is it? What would you say?
Well, that depends on your idea of who God is, right? I mean, if you believe in a sort of vengeful God that smotes people, I think you have a good argument that indeed the internet is a gift from God. Or maybe your idea of God has a great sense of humor, and that's another one. But I do think that the internet, in its current form, is like a mirror. It's reflecting back on who we really are. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, and we all live in our little worlds of our little communities, and it's a pretty good place. But when you go on the internet, it's not such a great place so much anymore. I think what's happening is the 1 or 2% of bad actors in the world and miscreants get a little bit of a larger megaphone associated with the internet. And they get access to information that you wish they didn't have. Mm-hmm. And so we have to solve that problem in the design of the internet. We really have to think deeply about that. Currently, the internet today, the amount of data created in 2017 will be greater than the entire amount of data created in human history over the last 5,000 years. So you think about that, we're accelerating dramatically. And the amount of data that's happening is happening because of some magical things that we don't necessarily see, things like the cloud as the new aspect of the internet. But the reality is there just one internet? I mean, here in America, about a quarter of Americans either cannot afford or cannot afford any kind of service or have very, very slow service to the point that you can't upload a photo. And I think the numbers specifically that came out in Recode just yesterday is 23% of urban Americans cannot afford broadband of any kind. 28% of rural Americans don't have access to broadband. And so that's two real different internets. If you think about all the innovation, especially the innovation happening by my esteemed panelists today, is that, that innovation is happening where there's broadband. And so we've got a whole group of us, almost a quarter of us, that don't have that same sort of access to the same experience of the internet as we do. And that's not just the United States. I mean, if we go to China or India, it's even worse. It's more like probably 40% of the population, but they have huge populations. In Europe, it's better than us. Maybe about 15% of Europeans don't have access to broadband. So that challenge creates two different ideas of what the internet is and what it is to those people. And I think if we think about the world today, the millennials are now reaching the point where they are at the highest level of earning. They're reaching their age where they're really out there earning at the highest level. And they've grown up with the internet natively, right? So their experience of the internet is also different than older Americans, right? Where the internet to them is just something that's interesting, whereas with the millennials, it's core to their life. And I think as you go to the next generation, it's even going to be more and more important. So in terms of the overview of what's happening in the internet today, I think we need to realize that it's not the same for all people. It's very, very different for how people are experiencing it. And that's creating divisions in our society. As a founder once told me, one of the founders of Twitter, they wanted to be sort of this free flow of information for everyone. but it's not yet that reality because a lot of people don't have access to it. So that's sort of what's happening in the big picture, I think, today. I think cloud technologies are going to be enabling what we call Internet of Things. So these guys from Toyota and Peloton bikes, these guys are part of the Internet of Things. And what's really interesting, because we don't see that as consumers of the internet, but the cloud is this new capability of handling and moving vast amounts of data. And because it's in the cloud, you can use machine learning to drive your experience.
For people who may not know, what do you mean when you say the cloud? What are you talking about?
Well, the cloud is a service, a service which your devices utilize. So if you have an iPhone or you have an Android device, you're using the cloud right now. Data is being stored there. It's making your experience in real time. If you're using Netflix on a device, this is all driven through the cloud. And so what it is just a sophisticated data center and a delivery mechanism of information, whether you're in a car or you're on a stationary bike, you have access to the cloud information, so it doesn't all have to sit on your device. So between the device and the internet is data centers known as the cloud, which can drive data. And that data is being analyzed by artificial intelligence to make your experience better.
Zack, I know when you launched Toyota Connected, one of the things you talked about was that the work of what you guys are doing is trying to free consumers from this tyranny of technology. What did you mean by that? What is the tyranny that we're living under apparently, and what is the work of what you're doing to make that different for us?
Sure. Well, to add on to where Jerry was talking, so I think that the internet gives us access to the world. So prior to the readily access of the internet, you only could get as much information as was available in your local library. You know, the example I gave is I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica. We were missing the letter M. Somebody lost it, and so I didn't know anything that started with the letter M growing up, right? So I think that the opportunity is the internet gives us access to tremendous information, and you don't have to travel to get it. But today, we're spending so much time trying to consume that information that we're often looking down. You go to a restaurant, families aren't talking, they're all looking at their devices. And there's just got to be a better way to make that data and make the technology work for humans. And that was the goal of us at Toyota Connected was, it's not about just ingesting large amounts of data and selling it to somebody else. It's take that data and make your life better. So a quick example could be you get in your car in the morning. If I'm connected to your calendar, I know that you've got an 8 o'clock meeting in the morning. I know based on traffic you're not going to get there. How about I just say, to you in the car, you're running a few minutes late. Do you want me to let the meeting organizer know? Or would you like to join the meeting by Skype without having to dial 15 numbers and a pound sign? So, or something as simple as that, to using predictive intelligence to know where you're going based on your social media likes. So I know enough about you, so when you're in the car and you say, I'm hungry, we know that you like Mexican food, and I'll offer you a restaurant that's contextual, 2 exits ahead of you instead of 2 exits behind you. And I know that there's 3 seatbelts buckled, so I can make reservations for 3 people. It's just using the information for you instead of you having to go app by app saying what restaurants are around here, then going to Open Table and saying, is there an open seat available, and then trying to connect with your friends to see who's there. It's just making that application or the data work.
It's making it seamless.
Yeah, that's right.
Safer too while you're
driving. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. John, can you tell us with Peloton, I mean, many of us have had stationary bikes for years, but this is different because you're connected. What changes about the experience of exercise at home when you're connected? What is the opportunity for consumers there?
So the big difference for Peloton is it's a hardware platform. We have a bike and we have a tablet computer, but we have software on the tablet. But to Jerry's point, we stream classes from the cloud, so you can take a high-energy, instructor-led group fitness class from the convenience of your own home on this platform called the Peloton Bike. So it's a vertically integrated technology platform that allows you to consume content from the cloud, or oftentimes live from our studio in New York City. So you will be with other people. An instructor will be breaking the fourth wall, looking into the lens of the camera and saying, Jerry in Aspen, this is your 100th ride. Everyone stand up and follow Jerry. 4,
you
3, 2,
actually
1.
have people biking in your offices
during
the day.
In our television production studio. One interesting thing I think about religion as you think about the internet, is going back to the 50s and 60s, pre-mass travel. You were kind of stuck in your own little town. I think in the 70s and 80s, when I was growing up, we were God-fearing, but we could travel a little bit, and that was your access to get out of your town. In the 90s, the mid-90s, when the internet came out, I think what Zach's saying is now we have access to all kinds of information, and we're not living under a rock like a lot of us grew up in our small towns. What I think is fascinating about this is, in the context of religion, religion is massively on the decline in the United States. In 1975, 68% of Americans considered themselves very religious. In 2015, 42% of Americans consider themselves very religious. I think the internet and the access to information and awareness and education is having downward pressure on people's association. I was raised Catholic. I went to church every Saturday or Sunday. At this point, fewer and fewer people. We're not raising our children. We live in New York City. We're not raising our children religious. But what I think is fascinating in the context of Peloton and technology in general is the internet can then give back some of that community that religion served in that hyper-local environment that that we all grew up with. It's been pulled away without, as we've moved away from religion. But things like Peloton and the Peloton community are allowing you to get on your bike in the morning and have a class and share a lifestyle with thousands of people around the world at the same time. And you have the music, and you have the community, you have the association, you have the ritual, you have the ceremony. You have somebody talking to you for 45 minutes from a pulpit. SoulCycle even has the candles on the altar type of thing. But the parallels between fitness and the communities that we're developing, specifically Peloton, I think it's fascinating. I study religion and how the internet has changed it. But I think that the human need for the association and the community that we all grew up with is still a void and is still needed. It's a human need.
How would you rate the substitute? I mean, it's different, obviously. You're at home.
I rate it very highly because it's more of a lifestyle. It's more, I am sharing the way I live my life with these other people, and we are similar foundationally from that respect. I would go into my church and, all different styles of people, and for a lot other than this, the Bible or whatever that we all, bought into, we weren't that similar. So I think the internet is allowing you to find people that are actually like you, and you can, share information and share your experiences. For Peloton, you're in the class with them, and you're seeing them, and you're interacting with them, and it's giving, we have one of the strongest communities of any brand, any young modern company that I've seen, because this fitness lifestyle is a real strong association. You see people, you think about, you'll walk around in the 70s and 80s, you see people with the Star of David or the cross, it was everyone's necklace. Now you walk around New York and it's a SoulCycle tank top or Barry's Boot Camp shorts or whatever, leggings or whatever. The lifestyle around health and wellness and fitness is a very powerful thing, and Peloton is benefiting from it.
Right. Well, would you, Jerry, with your experience investing in Twitter, I mean, Twitter also has enabled kind of these affinity communities to form, and we see, strong networks related to certain kinds of interests. But I want to say that on the other side, we also see a kind of nastiness and a tribalism that kind of makes me doubt some of the potential of all this connectivity.
Well, like I said, I mean, the internet itself, all technology, I think, is neutral. But the thing about the internet, the bad thing about the internet, is that it's reflecting all of us. There used to be this idea that a chain is only as good as its weakest link. Well, in our society, we need to have some sense of connection between each other, and we've opened that up.
Right.
And unfortunately, Twitter was too slow to put in mitigation to sort of deal with people that were abusing the First Amendment. I mean, in reality, the First Amendment is sacred to us in this country, and it's very, very important. But in the internet, we need to think about a way in which we can eliminate hate speech and eliminate the things that destroy a sense of community. And Twitter was slow to the game.
Still is slow. They've come under a lot of criticism for the way that trolls have attacked other...
Yeah, because they were early, but it's same. Look, we can look at Facebook, and there's any of these social media that connects things, there's a lot of problems. And I think we need to figure out the balance between First Amendment rights and what is it that gives us cohesiveness? What is it that gives us tolerance?
Yeah.
What is it that makes America great, that needs to be either self-regulated by the companies that are doing business, or we need to have a partnership between government and private sector?
I mean, I know a woman who studies troll culture on the internet, and one of the things she has said is that what's happening is that we're seeing that this is becoming visible, but a lot of these trolls aren't saying anything different than they weren't saying in their living rooms 40 years ago.
Yeah, we have to now
privately.
confront ourselves.
So
I mean,
now we see it.
The truth is, look, I live in Aspen, so it's a wonderful community. You know, we don't have as big a problem with that in normal everyday life. We're a little more public, but when you digitize communication, you leave open for the dark side of people's consciousness coming out and expressing it. The internet needs a boost of higher consciousness is what we need. And I do think that the opportunity to do that is now in front of Twitter and other sources to be able to really emphasize the values that we stand for and that Twitter stands for.
I mean, it seems to me like you have two different approaches here. One is make better humans. I'm not sure how you do that. And the other is make better platforms, which also seems really challenging. Do you have a sense of...
Well, you have to be careful. Listen, a lot of companies out there, I think Facebook's one of them, that does what is called brain hacking. Brain hacking are things that are ways of manipulating people electronically to get you to open the app. How many of you out here in the audience have problems always looking at your phone and seeing too many notifications and you want to grab and reach for that notification? This is something that is done also by the manufacturers, where they want you to go back to the device over and over. And this is a problem. We need to manage that, because this is abusive toward people. And it leads people, whether they're doing good things or bad things, to be overly engaged and disturbing people's well-beings.
Zack, I want to go back to you at Toyota. Some of what you're doing here, as you're saying, is making this connectivity more seamless, making it easier for us to do our jobs, making it easier for us to meet our friends at a restaurant. How do you see this changing, just social interaction? How does it change how we work? How does it change even how our cities are geographically spread out or built in more densely? Like, what are the long-term consequences?
Sure. And I also think, we were just talking about the negative side of the internet, but there's some really great things too. So, for example, there's 30,000 fatalities in cars today, caused mostly by human error. With technology, we can get rid of that. So today, you're already seeing on Toyota and Lexus vehicles something called safety sense. So as you drift out of lane, it brings you back in. If you don't stop and traffic stopped ahead of you, we'll bring the car to a safe stop. But the next generation, what we're doing is we're also taking information such as when we see cars swerving on a road. So there must be an object on the road. So we can take that information to the cloud, understand it, and then start warning the vehicles behind them. And then we can take that to the next generation when we get to autonomous driving vehicles, where we will avoid situations where a human wouldn't be able to handle it. It'll take us a few more years to get there. It's not as ready as what you might be reading in the press today, but it is going to happen.
Would there be potential there for would you guys be able to see, like, oh, this driver is swerving all over the road, report that? I mean, is there a reporting mechanism for unsafe driving as well?
So one of the other use cases that we're doing today is we're modeling where we're seeing, and this might be a good example here, is if there's ice on the road. So we can detect anti-lock brakes, and as those events occur, they go to the cloud. We understand that. So not only can we warn the drivers behind them, but we can also start letting governmental agencies know, hey, if you're cleaning up ice on the road, here's a good place to start. We had early indications a few years ago with a big earthquake in Japan, where early responders couldn't get to the people that they needed to get to help. We were able to see where traffic was stopped and route the ambulances around them. So there's a lot of value that can come from this technology. And in the next generation, we're doing a new partnership. So mobility is what we're focused on. However a person defines mobility. We have examples where we've built a device that can wear around your neck, and that's for blind people, and it can read signs, and it can read facial patterns and recognize when a friend's in the room, or how to find a restroom, and then give you haptic responses to know which way to turn to get to it. My company, what we're doing is building a new mobility services platform, so that future, whether you want to interact with Uber for ride sharing or car sharing like Get Around, We're building that platform. So with GetAround think of Airbnb for your car. They're based up in San Francisco. So if you're not using your car, you can park it on the street and then make some money on it while you're at work. And what we saw early on were people renting Priuses for $250 to $300 a month. They were parking around San Francisco and they were making about $1,000 a month on that car.
Wow.
So we built a device where you can, what we call the smart key box. You can throw this device in your car and then from your phone give somebody else access to your car for a period of time that you define. And then you can score how well they are driving your car. And maybe you don't want to rent your car to somebody who's a bad driver
Right.
next time. And then you can geofence it. So if they take that car to a place where they shouldn't be driving, then you get notified. But that same platform in the future will allow for what we call trunk delivery. So if you order something from Amazon, or you order your Peloton, and you're not going to be home, we can have it delivered to your SUV while you're at work.
One sector I know that I've read some analysts saying has been kind of ignored by the tech industry is older Americans, senior citizens, elderly Americans. It seems that mobility is obviously a big issue for this community. Have you guys looked at ways to serve their needs more?
Yeah, we are. Toyota is one of the, I believe, the largest investor in R&D around robotics, and mostly because in Japan we have an aging society, and I think at this point they have 6 retirees for every 1 worker. So they've got a problem, and they need to be able to help. And so we're building what we call helper robots to either help you get in the house, or if you're bedridden, to get you, medicine or get you your water, or to our vehicles that can help get you into an autonomous vehicle and get you to your doctor's appointments. We do have an aging society that will need help. And so that's a very big area of investment for Toyota.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, have you looked at that sector at all with aging
mean?
Americans? Just different needs of the senior citizen community with using phones or other kinds of.
Yeah, I think, look, as you age, one of the things that's interesting with workers, for example, Tom Friedman called that, American workers need to have a contract with their companies and say, hey, I'm going to have to continue my education. Mm-hmm. I think that we're in a phase where getting through high school or getting through college and saying I'm done is over. You have to continue to educate. We're living in a world of continuous innovation. Mm-hmm. And so workers and older people have to continue to stay educated and stay engaged. And I think that in terms of as our society ages and people live longer, there's more of an opportunity for those people to be actively involved. And the internet provides some business opportunities for them to be involved in services, because so many people can work from home now. Mm-hmm. So I do think if you have a skill and you're retiring, you can look at the internet. For example, teaching. One of the great things you talked about earlier is education. For all the people who have an Abraham Lincoln type, inner Abraham Lincoln mm-hmm. inside yourself, the internet is a great place for continuing education. And also for younger people as an alternative. I mean, one of my fellow board members here at the Aspen Institute, a gentleman named Sal Khan, has created the Khan Academy, where millions of young students all over the world have had some of the best classes in mathematics.
Can you tell us a little bit about Khan Academy for people
sure.
who don't?
I mean, what's great is you can go on Khan Academy and take a class of mathematics for free. And it's translated into many, many languages around the world. Early on in its development, Bill Gates saw the videos and said, this is better than the classroom that my son is in. And so he actually helped his son do mathematics on Khan Academy. So Khan Academy is some of the world's best education, and it's available for free on the internet, anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the beauties of the internet. One of the things that's giving back is an opportunity for all of us to self-educate, if we have access to it.
Yeah.
If we have broadband.
Right. And that goes back to your original point.
Yeah.
John, I know one of the things you've talked about is we look out at the future of this Internet of Things, big data, is that you've talked about possibly seeing a shift away from Silicon Valley as the epicenter of our innovation in that industry. Why do you see that happening? Where's it going to go? What are the new industries that are going to really change down the road?
So, like I said, I live in New York City. The Valley, although I was in California, early days of City Search back in '96, so I've been in consumer internet for over 20 years. But I've seen all of the hardcore tech stuff come out of the Valley, but especially in the consumer pure software, space, like the Googles, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, photo sharing, search, social networking, all kinds of pure play internet innovation has come out of the Valley. Fast forward to the next 10 or 20 years, when we're going to start seeing more disruption out of massive industries and categories where you need actually domain expertise and institutional knowledge of that category in order to disrupt that category. You think about Bloomberg. Bloomberg could not have happened in the Valley because the awareness of those software engineers and those entrepreneurs didn't understand the nuances of what was happening in New York City finance. So when you think about the industries that New York City dominates, finance, fashion, real estate. So in real estate, you're seeing WeWork, Cadre, Compass, some cool real estate innovation. Fashion, you're seeing Rent the Runway, you're seeing Harry's, Warby Parker, all these different things where New Yorkers understand fashion a lot better than their Valley peers, right? For us, fitness. Fitness, SoulCycle and Flywheel and Bears Bootcamp and all these things, boutique instructor-led group fitness the innovation was taking place in New York. So Peloton made sense to be there. Media, where is media innovation taking place? Well, the media mecca is in New York City. So you're seeing probably 15 cool companies, The Skim, BuzzFeed, on and on, all kinds of things. Obviously, Wall Street Journal and New York Times are becoming tech. But I just feel like there's so many big categories that, auto as well, big categories that you really need to understand that category in order to disrupt that category. And so the pure searches where it's not being built on anything, it's just an obvious early, here's how you leverage the internet to, for access for information. I think a lot of that low-hanging fruit has been plucked. And I think what you're going to see is major categories disrupted by tech innovation. But I think the advantage is shifting more towards New York City and other areas where there's big industries.
I would add to that,
Yes.
that in the last 23 years of investing, that almost all businesses on the internet today are businesses that existed offline. And they've moved to the internet. And they're in the process of understanding, as the internet evolves itself, from sort of a PC desktop-based product to something that's based on smartphones and mobile devices, and now Internet of Things.
Can you give us an example of?
Well, example of everything. Like Uber is a great example of look, taxi businesses have been around forever, and so they moved that business onto the internet.
Right.
But all businesses are existing somewhere offline. But what we're going to see in this next phase is sort of the first real native investments of businesses that are based on the internet, for the internet, that may never have existed in previous incarnations. And,
is Twitter an example of that? How?
Well, Twitter's just word of mouth. I mean,
Yeah.
Twitter's like the town crier. Twitter's as old as humanity itself. I mean, we just moved it to a format where it could be, you take advantage of digital technologies. I think Toyota, for example, what these guys are doing with cars, right now it's turning the car into an internet device.
Yeah.
Natively, and then they're going to go in further directions. And you should talk about that, where you're going with it. He mentioned a few of his innovations, but car companies like Toyota are the first people to turn these independent vehicles into network connected internet devices. And when you unlock that, the potential for where that goes is really interesting.
That's right. Yeah, and there's, when you look further out down the road, we spend about on average 30 minutes a day in our vehicle, and you think about the next generation of what that could do is things like telematics. If you're holding a steering wheel for 30 minutes a day, we can monitor your heartbeat. It's very low cost to put in something to monitor your respiration.
Wow.
And we can detect glucose levels. And then if we detect a dangerous situation, we can notify somebody and pull you off the road safely. But also, that information becomes super meaningful. So if you're monitoring your health every single day, and guess what? That seat is also a scale because there's a sensor when you don't buckle your seatbelt. We know how much you weigh every day. So over time, that becomes super meaningful. You may want to share that safely and securely with your doctor at your choosing. We're also doing right away something called use-based insurance. You may be familiar with the progressive model where they send you a device, you plug it into your car, and they monitor how you drive. But now that your car is connected, you should really own that information. So we'll monitor how you drive, and then you can decide if you want to send it to State Farm or Liberty Mutual, or whoever you decide you want to send it to. You'll be in control of your own data versus these aggregators of information that have been sucking up your data and trying to monetize it.
I think there's going to be some really interesting companies. Like all of us in this room have an asset that we don't think about, and that asset is called attention. So companies will pay you to give your attention, and then over time, if you have control of your own data, you'll be able to monetize your own attention on the internet.
I want to open it up for questions from the audience. We've had a big conversation about the future of all this stuff, but we would like to hear from all of you. So just shout, I guess. Oh, no, there's a mic coming to you. Here it comes.
Let me just mention the downside of the internet, and that is our fake news and pornography, which come from anonymous sources. So my couple of questions are, should the internet be changed? Or first, can the internet be changed so that you can discover who sent stuff to you? And secondly, should the internet be changed? And thirdly, if all that happens and you can discover a perpetrator, who should enforce, if any?
I don't know if any of you.
Well, I'd say, I'd quote Dickens, "'Twas the best of times, 'twas the worst of times. 'Twas the age of wisdom and the age of foolishness." Look, we've had fake news for a long time. National Enquirer is a great example, where there's some stories that are really legit next to fake stories. We at the internet, we need to fix this stuff. And I think the best way to do it is to self-police, to allow the communities themselves to identify the fake news and things that are antisocial, like pornography, terrorists using the internet. There's all kinds of behavior that's bad, and we're in this Wild West phase today, where things are wide open. We now have gotten to the point where the internet is essential to our lives. Cyber war is focused exclusively on the internet. This is where we need to sort of say, hey, we need to get more sophisticated, because the bad guys are more sophisticated. And those bad guys are also producing the fake news, in my mind. Those are antisocial behavior. We need to enact laws about it, and we need to go out after these people. But we have to have the will.
One of the other, I was going to say Peloton is.
Yeah, the one good thing I would say about reason why I remain optimistic about all this stuff, it is the early days. Necessity is the mother of invention. You're seeing things evolve pretty fast, and all the right thinking take place around the fake news, I think, at all the big companies, because their incentives are aligned. They don't want their platform to be bastardized or untrusted. But one fun thing for all of us that I'm seeing in New York, I went to business school probably 20 years ago, and people coming out at the time wanted to become hedge fund managers. That was the job du jour that was everyone wanted or coveted. Prior to that, VCs, in the 90s, getting into venture capital was the thing. Today, you're seeing college kids and MBA graduates or whoever coming out, and they want to become entrepreneurs. It is the in vogue thing that I'm seeing in New York, and I think in the Valley, and I think nationwide. I think these youngsters are going to solve these problems for us. If the companies don't, I think there will be people that find a way. If there's a need in the society for filters or for tracking or tracing or identity theft issues and all that stuff, I think they will be solved by the next generation of entrepreneurs, which is encouraging for all of us.
I also want to say Peloton's really interesting in that you built your own hardware and software. So it's an internet experience, but at the same time, you're existing outside of that internet where all this
Yeah, I mean, for us, we control, to your point, we are a walled garden, as it's called. We control our entire technology stack, and we're the only company in the world, it sounds really weird, but I've vetted it, I think it's true, that we build our own hardware, our own software, and we stream our own media for our own platform. So Apple is vertically integrated, and they make hardware and software. But when you watch Angelina Jolie on your iPad, she doesn't work at Apple, right? She works at Paramount or Universal or something. It's content coming onto their platform. At Peloton, you're watching that screen and it's Peloton employees, Peloton celebrities, beautiful women wearing Peloton jog bras, hot men wearing Peloton tank tops. They're talking a Peloton language. They are breaking the fourth wall. It is a vertically integrated platform controlling the entire technology stack, including the media, which is very unique. But for us, then, we can think about vulgarities or things that are offensive. We give you a filter and we say, do you want bad language or do you not care? So because we control the whole thing, we can give you a 10 out of 10 experience that fits your needs, and we listen to our consumers. If they want something different, we change it. But no one is poisoning our well, so to speak, which is kind of a
it's
cool
your
thing
own
for us.
part of the internet, and you
That's
control it. Yeah.
Flipboard, I'm an investor in Flipboard. We're doing the same thing. We have a thing called Daily Edition. So we curate it so we eliminate all fake news sources. So we're trying to self-deal with this. So Flipboard's a wide open platform. You can choose any source of information you want, but we have taken the task to say, okay, through Daily Edition and something called, if you're on Android, called Briefings, we curate it and there's no fake news.
Right. So you can see an internet developing that is leaving that internet behind. Over here, we have a question.
Thanks very much. With the rise of cloud mobility platform and, of course, open source, there was a hope and expectation that those major trends would lead to more entrepreneurs, increase the number of entrepreneurs in technology startups, given the fact that the upstart cost based on these trends are lower. Unfortunately, that has not happened. In fact, we've seen major players and major platforms consolidating their positions and market shares and market concentration. And in fact, we've seen a significantly additional barriers to entry for young technology entrepreneurs in the past 5 to 7 years. What do you see about that trend? Do you expect that trend to continue? Major players continually consolidating their positions and market shares, or you expect somehow, the hope of young entrepreneurs, we'll see actually, in fact, they'll be able to actually get more capital for startup, given those trends?
Yeah, so I coming from the consumer internet, I saw the whole thing take place. But you're right, it is much easier for an entrepreneur to launch a business today. It is much harder, to your point, for them to get traction. You don't need to put iron in the rack anymore like you used to when we started companies 15 years ago. You can just spin up an Amazon Web Service. So it's easy, it's efficient, it's fast. You can do it with 3 people in a garage. But you're right, in order to, back to the eyeballs and the attention is the most important thing that you're solving for, is how do you get eyeballs away from Facebook or Google or Snap or Instagram. The big boys have gotten stronger and spread their wings and moved into the other categories. Amazon, is moving. My buddy runs Fresh Direct. They just bought Whole Foods, so now they're trying to figure out, they're moving into fashion. Amazon, I used to be president of Barnes & Noble, so we competed against them and lost, as you know. It's Amazon's getting stronger, Google's getting stronger, Facebook's getting stronger, and Apple's getting stronger. So yes, that's scary for me, and that's part of the reason why I used to work for Barry Diller. That's why one of the reasons why I left consumer internet, because they had squeezed all of the fun out of it, and it was hard, to your point, for a young company to get traction in that they control, especially Google for intent-driven, now Facebook for discovery-driven. But that's one of the reasons why I started Peloton and control the entire technology stack. We also, I haven't mentioned this, we run our own retail stores. So we don't want Amazon seeing what's happening and then backing into our category like they've done, and with Amazon Basics against all kinds of different things. So we are we don't sell through channel. We only sell through Peloton retail stores and our own website. So we took the things into our own hands and said, we're going to create a non-commoditized product. We're going to sell it ourselves. So you're right. To your point, we had to do the hardware, the manufacturing, the content, the software, the retail, the logistics. But now Amazon, nor Google, nor Facebook, or Apple are telling me what I can and can't do, but it required a lot of capital. So you're right to think that these youngsters have an uphill battle trying to get attention away from the other places that are also getting smarter and smarter at getting your attention?
I would say that, look, as far as investing goes, there's cycles. There's 2007 was a great cycle of internet expansion based on a new platform. 2007, and maybe actually 2008, when Apple did their deal with AT&T, and 15 million subscribers came online pretty quickly. So then the smartphone, which probably was mostly a BlackBerry device, became something that could access applications in a big way. And you have these periods of openness, innovation, expansion, and periods of consolidation. We're in a period of consolidation right now. To your point, the big guys are more powerful. So the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks, and Amazon are all taking advantage of their power and their controlled platforms. So it'll be easier for small entrepreneurs to come back. There's always an opportunity for entrepreneurs, and because more and more the world is digitizing, the internet is still a wide open place for them to go. But when there's a new technology platform, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but when that emerges, then the cycle will shift again from consolidation to expansion. But I think right now we're right in the heart of a consolidation cycle, and it's challenging.
One of the other things I see here is, I know you were saying, some of our sectors seem to be kind of stuck right now. People know where they go for content every day. They have their social media networks. But both Zack and John are working on, I think, in the big picture, both of your companies are focused on saving people time, which seems to be something that there's real pent-up demand for. You don't have to go to the gym. You can exercise from home. Your 25, 30 minutes in the car aren't wasted. We can get all this stuff done then. It seems like there's a thread there and that there's a real opportunity for a really time-pressed consumer market to find new things that are going to help them be more efficient.
I would add for both of you guys, you're doing more than saving time. You're creating a user experience that you're trying to brand.
That's right.
And say, this is something special.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And also to the earlier point, we built a new kind of platform called Smart Device Link, and we partnered with Ford and several other automotive companies to give entrepreneurs a path. If they want to build an app, you can still build it in Android or iOS, and it can run in our cars potentially, but we've given you a new path. And the reason why we've done this is we want to curate the experience in the vehicle, and that's exactly what Jerry is saying is, when you get in a car, if we just open it up to the random internet and you had a really bad experience, then your perception is that, well, it's a bad experience in a Toyota or a Lexus. So what we want to do is curate your experience. And it shouldn't be that, again, that app by app experience. It should just be leveraging the data and the information that you want. And I think for any entrepreneur, the next generation isn't through an app. It's through a new platform, a new experience. It's making people's lives easier. And fundamentally, what the new image of luxury is, it isn't about things, it's about time and having quality of your life. And I think that's what, like things like Peloton, if I'm in a remote area where I grew up in a small town in Michigan, I would have never had access to something like that. But this has given me this access and this experience that I don't have to leave home for. And I think that's the new frontier.
Up in the back. Oh, there's a mic coming, one sec.
All of these concepts are wonderful, and our age bracket uses them. I mean, whether it's Facebook, internet access, including financial, banking online, and everything else that goes on with financial data. I recently was in Russia, and the hacking of your data, of all of your personal information, is so extreme. How do we secure that, and how do we continue to use these apps without jeopardizing our financial security or our medical information that is so readily available now out there, and we all just take it for granted? Not just our shopping habits, which is big data, but the real life information that could have a detrimental effect should it be hacked.
Yeah.
That's a great question for
I have two jobs at Toyota. So I'm the CEO and president of Toyota Connected, but I'm also the chief information officer for Toyota North America. Essentially, we're responsible for IT. I spend a lot of time focused on cybersecurity, and it really is. It's no longer worrying about these, a 13-year-old kid in Des Moines hacking into the company. It's about these nation states trying to get in and take your data and monetizing it on the black market. nobody can go it alone. And so I spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C., working with the U.S. government, trying to find ways where we can partner with other people in the industry. And so we have these information sharing committees. So there's an auto ISAC that Toyota helped start up, where we share with other automotive companies where we see bad guys in the marketplace, and partnering with the U.S. government to go after them. It is going to take a partnership between large companies, private individuals, and government to solve this problem. The problem with cybercrime is that it pays. These people can extort and steal money from other countries with no fear of going to prison. So that's much better than the traditional type of crime that we used to see from organized crime. This is just much easier and more lucrative. So it's going to keep happening until we all get together and stop it. But also, I think to an earlier point that John made is that there's a lot of money. So in big companies, we're spending lots of money on cyber software. And so you're seeing most of the startups that are getting a lot of attention right now, and I'm sure Jerry can jump into this one, is that if you've got an idea for how to stop the bad guys at any level of the software and hardware, you're going to find money. And it's a great place to start as an entrepreneur. So I think that we have to make the prevention be as profitable as the crime.
Yeah. I would only add that use a lot of discernment in who and what you're going to share your data with. 2, you need to commit. If you're going to decide to use all these innovations, you need to commit to stay current. For millennials, for example, are 28% more likely to share their information. They're 15% more likely than the average American to share their purchase information. They've sort of adopted and given up on privacy in a lot of ways compared to how we think in our generation. It's much more complex. For example, my generation, identity is just who you are. But for a millennial, they know that identity means authorization, authentication, personalization, reputation. These are the bifurcation of identity is what you have to get used to, and be very thoughtful about how your identity is being accessed and used. Which
what do you
category?
Mean by bifurcation of identity? You mean online and off?
Well, no, online. You've got your reputation based on if you're involved on eBay and selling something, or you're buying something, or you're a customer of Uber, you have a reputation, you get rated by the drivers directly. You've got authentication. Is this really me? Yes, it's really me. I'm the bank, I'm connecting with you. Authorization, do I let my kid use my Netflix account? Who do I authorize this with? Communication, so I'm communicating with you by phone. I'm gonna call so-and-so. All these areas have a discipline onto itself. And you have to be conscious of that if you're gonna engage in sharing your data. So it's not just, it's an educational process to be aware that complexity around concepts of identity are part of the new internet.
You've also
and if I can just give you, the best thing you could do is change your password every 30 days at a minimum. You'd be surprised at how many people pick one. We all do it, we all have Post-its, and you got 10 different ones. And so you all start using the same one, just stop doing it. That'll save you a lot of headache.
You have also invested in Snapchat, which has a really different approach to kind of disappearing people's trails.
Yeah, because the millennials say, hey, I don't want my moment to be on the internet forever. I want it to go away. I don't want what I did when I was 15 to haunt me when I'm 30. Right. And so Snapchat is about private sharing exclusively with your real friends, not your 400 best friends on Facebook. It's your real friends, your real family, and who you care about at the moment. But you want that stuff to disappear, most of it.
Yeah.
Some of it you can keep, but most of it you want it to go away for that reason.
Back to the audience. Any more questions out there? In the back?
Thanks so much. I was just hoping to return and get your thoughts on one of your opening comments regarding the fraction of people who don't have access to the internet. Is that merely an observation, or is there something in your opinion that should be organized as an action to connect the rest of humanity? Is it a bug or a feature, in other words? And if it's a bug, what do we do about it?
Well, remember this panel is the internet a gift from God? Well, only some people have it, some people don't. And so the question becomes is if we are in our society and if we're selling services, how do we want to, for a business person, I want to have my market bigger. I want the FCC to say, hey, let's spend more money, let's get them online. If I'm a citizen, I want these people to be educated. I want them to be educated in the Constitution. I want them to be educated with what's happening. Being connected to the internet is a key thing if you want to be active in the world today, and active in commerce, and active in education. And I do think we need to think about that as more of a priority in this country. And by the way, if you want all these wonderful innovations that these guys are doing, you need to have broadband. And so I make it as an observation that there's not just one internet for all people, there's two.
Jerry, I got to correct you. You don't need broadband, you just need a Toyota.
There you go. That's one way of looking at it.
Everybody's getting it. All right, are there any other more questions? Oh, in the back.
Hi, my name is Ibrahim. I'm a Bezos scholar. And I was just wondering, because I know internet has definitely revolutionized the media, of course, and one downside that I've seen, though, is that it's become a breeding ground for stigma, hate, fear, stereotypes, and really distrust between people. And as much as we can try to censor that, the heart of the matter is that it's not that the internet is just a canvas, it's that the problem is within people themselves and within society itself. So I was wondering, is there a way in which the internet can be reoriented to help people change in a way so that this hate is stymied instead of proliferated? And like back to the subject of the entire talk, is it a gift from God? So can it be used as a gift to help people change and stop that?
I think, to Jerry's point about the anonymity, I think the hateful, when you see the threads, reactions to posts, and people just weigh in with the jerkiest, worst, hurtful, hateful comments, that's just like, how do these people say this stuff? I think it's the anonymity that they just hide behind. To the extent that some of these platforms become, you are a human being there, I think Amazon does a nice job. It's actually a person, so you don't see hateful things on Amazon. It's filtered and reviewed and liked, and the things that bubble to the top are value add. It's not just ridiculous comments about a product. So I think the platforms need to solve it to a large extent. I'm a fan of leadership. I think that we need better leadership in the world, independent of the internet. And I think what you're seeing from Donald Trump right now is obviously like him or hate him, but I think it's dangerous the way that he is so flip with his comments. That's actually encouraging people to let loose on their most hurtful, hateful feelings at a whim that I think is very unhealthy. And but I think the platforms can solve it. I think the media outlets that you read have a responsibility to make sure that the quality of the user-generated comment is filtered and is value add. And I think the platforms that do a good job of that will survive, and the platforms that just let it be a free-for-all won't survive over time, I hope.
Look, the internet is different in China than it is in the United States. The internet is different in India than it is in the United States. We tolerate more of that hate stuff in our internet because we've sort of put the First Amendment above everything else. I think the businesses themselves in the last few years, Twitter in particular, has gone out of its way to create tools to block some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But we need more government encouragement and more government intervention, I think, to reduce the hate crime. We're not going to be very good as technologists to raise people's consciousness so they don't do it. So people aren't going to necessarily change. We can't assume that. But what we can do, though, is make those people more visible, the ones that are doing it, not their hate, but make them more visible so people can say, hey, these aren't the kind of people we want to have in our community.
How do you square the need for a government to act with what John's saying about the head of our government?
What do you mean?
I mean, we have in the president someone who uses these tools in a very flippant way. Is that a tough
Well, I think
ask of the government to?
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity for Americans to decide, you know, I may have been socialized to believe that a leader is someone else in the room. But when I look at a leader and I don't like what I hear, maybe I need to be a leader. Maybe I need to be a leader and not look for some hero or someone else to do it, but I need to be my own person. And maybe that's the trend that we need to encourage in education, is that everyone needs to be a leader of their own lives and stop looking to others to tell them what to do or what to believe.
This is going to be our last question from the audience.
So, I mean, going along that hate and stuff like that, like, where is that, like, where's the line? Like, I think that's the hard thing in some of these countries, like China's, they've defined a line as anything in this, and they just don't let anybody see it. Like, where do we draw the line? Like, do we draw the line, oh, this person's driving aggressive, so we're going to stop their car? Toyota drawing the line there? Or, like, I don't see them doing that, but I'm just saying, is that the line? Or is the line, like, you know, a president can't say this or that? Does that make sense? Like, where do we actually draw the line on hate, and how do we actually get there?
Yeah, I think these are not that much different from when we had the debates on what is art and what is pornography. There's begins to blur the lines, and how much do we want government to dictate to us what we can say and what we can't say, and that's, I don't know if we can answer that in this forum, but it's certainly worthy of the debate. You know, I get it. Hey, I spend my time and my career working on the internet, but at the same time, I don't let my 9-year-old son go on the internet by himself without me sitting there making sure that I know where he's going or having the right filters on it. It's tough, but I do think we are seeing more trends where, as you're surfing the internet, or if you want to leave a comment, you have to leave a verified email address, and so there becomes more of a better trail, and it's pushing more of these hate mongers to the dark web, where they probably belong.
I will say also, to Jerry's point about leadership, I think leadership can come from corporate America. Yesterday, we have a Facebook page, a closed group with 38,000 people who are crazy for Peloton, and somebody posted something that was really nasty and critical, and first of all, the community destroyed the guy, but then somebody tagged me and said, John, check this out. And I'm the CEO of the company, and I get in there, and I sent it to our social team, sent it to JV, and we took it down. Mm-hmm. And I'm allowed to do that because it's a company, you know, that's a decision that I can make. No one's going to tell me. I mean, I can get backlash from it, obviously, but we do need the corporate leadership to take a stand, and Mark Zuckerberg seems to be trying to do that. I know the Twitter leadership is committed as well. It's, you know, it's all of our responsibility. To your point, it's not something we can point our finger at somebody else.
Yeah, you know, look, sexual predators must register in their community in this state. We have to know where they are. We don't have to hear what they have to say. We just know where they are. In my view, on the internet, we should have blocking tools and block hate. But these people that are continual abusers of this, they need to be registered, and we need to find out who they are. And people who are doing business like Toyota or Peloton say, hey, we know about this group of people here that these are abusers. We should be able to block them from our sites.
You're saying from the businesses themselves?
Absolutely.
The businesses themselves.
Businesses themselves need to do this, yeah. Businesses themselves need to say, hey, you said you collaborate with Ford Motor Company. You guys need to think, hey, you know what? We're in the business of innovation. These few people can take our innovation and create problems for us. We ought to certainly have the ability to at least know who they are and deal with them appropriately. What degree of freedom do we want to allow them to access and use our innovations?